Over the last few years, we've partnered with a number of developers to launch their games with touch on Xbox Cloud Gaming. Hi, I'm Sean Farkas, and I'm a developer on the Xbox Cloud Gaming team. And today, we're going to look at the work that Ryu Ga Gotoku Studio did to build an immersive touch experience for Yakuza Like a Dragon. How they used the Touch Adaptation Kit and the Cloud-aware APIs to provide a custom and player-focused experience for Yakuza. When you build touch control layouts for your game, you'll probably quickly discover that there are different parts of your game that would benefit from having different layouts. Maybe different scenes use different control schemes, or maybe having controls on screen doesn't make sense at all during a cutscene. The developers at Ryu Ga Gotoku Studios worked through the different types of interactions that players have in Yakuza Like a Dragon and discovered there were at least 6 different control sets that made sense in that game. The controls that make sense when you're in battle are different than the controls that make sense when you're on the map or in the menus, for instance. Xbox Game Streaming provides APIs that make it easy to build this sort of immersive experience. All you have to do is recognize when your game is transitioned to a state that would benefit from a specific new layout and send the message to the Game Streaming app asking it to swap to that layout. You can also send a message asking the app to hide the layouts entirely. For example, if you need to clear the screen for a cinematic. So let's jump in and take a look at how you might build this code now. The first step in the process is to use the Touch Adaptation Kit, what we call the TAK, to build the layouts that your game needs. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail here. The Getting Started with Game Streaming talk with Carla Lariva and Milena Gonzalez goes into a lot more detail about how you might get up and running with the TAK. That talk tells you how to build a touch layout, how to load it up into your game streaming app, and how to test out your game to make sure the layout works well with it. But that's just a real quick summary for context here. The TAK is basically at its core just a technology that converts player touch inputs into gamepad inputs for the game to process. So that is, when you use the TAK, your game actually never sees a touch input. As far as it knows, it's being played entirely on a gamepad. You build JSON files for your game which describe which touch controls should be on screen, what they should look like, where they should be located, and importantly, how they should respond to player inputs to convert those into gamepad inputs. And one of the key features the TAK provides is the ability to use semantic icons for button inputs, either built-in icons or custom art that you provide yourself. For instance, in the Yakuza Like a Dragon map screen, the right trigger is used to zoom in. Instead of using a picture of the Xbox right trigger, instead, they use a magnifying glass. And we'll see other examples of how Ryu Ga Gotoku Studio used these semantic icons throughout their Yakuza Like a Dragon touch controls in just a few minutes. Switching between layouts is really straightforward. Every layout has a name, which is the name of its defining JSON file, just without the extension. So for example, if a layout is defined in driving.json, it will be named simply driving. Fighting.json is fighting. And by passing the name of this layout to the X Game Streaming Show Touch Control Layout API, a message gets sent asynchronously to the Game Streaming app, asking it to switch to the layout with that given name. You can notice here this really is just one line of code, fire and forget. You don't even have to check to see if you're streaming or if you're on a touch-capable device. In either of those cases, the API just acts as a no-op. The inverse, hiding the touch controls during a cinematic, or if you have a menu system which interacts with touch directly itself, is just as easy. You can simply ask the Game Streaming app to hide the currently displayed touch controls. And if any controls are currently being displayed, they'll be removed from the screen until the next call to X Game Streaming Show Touch Control Layout. So let's jump in and take a look at how these APIs are used to build an incredibly responsive touch control experience in Yakuza Like a Dragon. As the game starts up, and in the menus, we have a full set of Xbox controls available, so the player can navigate the menu and get into gameplay. Now we've selected a chapter to replay, and we're transitioned to a cutscene. Notice how the cutscene layout maximizes the on-screen space for the cinematic by including only the controls for advancing through and pausing the cutscene itself. This really helps to improve player immersion by letting them focus on what's going on in the cutscene rather than being distracted by extraneous on-screen controls. But when we pause the cutscene, additional controls are added, allowing us to navigate the pop-up menu that occurs. So let's load up a save game now, and that's going to place us on the streets of Kamurocho. In this mode, we're going to have left and right joysticks available to us, and they each have semantic icons indicating they're for walking around and manipulating the camera. We have additional semantic icons on the screen for entering first-person mode, for interacting with characters, and one for bringing up the map. Opening the map switches the layout again to one which moves the buttons out of the way of the main map area, allowing the player to really focus on their objectives. We get a zoom and navigation buttons with semantic icons on the left of the screen, and a set of interaction buttons shifted off to the right. Now similarly, when we go into photography mode, the controls are adjusted to reduce the number of buttons to only the ones needed for taking a photo, as well as, again, changing the semantic icons to match the photography context. Now finally, we enter combat, and the controls once again adjust in a way that makes the most sense for these encounters. The A, B, X, Y face buttons gain a prominent position on the right of the screen because those are the main inputs during a combat encounter. The semantic icons have changed again, with the left stick no longer being used for walking around, but instead navigating your choices in battle. You can see how providing context-sensitive touch controls for Yakuza Like a Dragon really helped to enable developers at Ryu Ga Gotoku Studio make their game a great experience for players who are playing their game on mobile devices. Doing this type of work does not require much in the way of code changes. It's just one function call whenever the context changes, but it can have a huge payoff for your players. Across all of Xbox game streaming, we see that 20% of our players use touch controls exclusively. And by building these touch controls for your game, you really help open it up to that set of players. Partly because of the high number of players who exclusively use touch, we also find that games on Xbox game streaming, which add these touch controls, see a 2x increase in gameplay time. If you're interested in learning more about how you can build touch layouts and actually get up and running on your own, we have additional resources available at the link on this slide. Thanks for watching.